I want to talk about this story. So this is something that I saw before I went on. Okay, over the course of the last month or so, we have had multiple prominent anti-vax conservatives die from COVID-19. The first was Dick Farrell. He worked for Newsmax, and that's his real name, Dick Farrell. He worked for Newsmax. He was an anti-vaxxer, got COVID, died. Then we saw Scott Apley, a prominent Republican in Texas, anti-vax, made fun of COVID and the severity of COVID, got COVID, died. Then we had Phil Valentine, was not anti-vax according to his family, but vaccine hesitant, got COVID, died. Last week, Chris Johansson, who is a GOP lawmaker from the state of Maine, he and his wife are both anti-vax. His wife got COVID, died. Days later, he was attending an anti-vax rally in Maine. And we have another story in this saga, which I don't know when this series is going to end. Anti-vax lawyer for dozens of Capitol rioters is now on a ventilator with COVID-19. This is from John Wright of Raw Story. Sorry, folks. I'm not laughing like at the deaths. I'm laughing at the insanity. Okay, so don't come at me, you pearl-clutching MAGA chuds. Attorney John Pierce, who has represented Kenosha, Wisconsin shooting suspect Kyle Rittenhouse, as well as more than a dozen Capitol rioters, reportedly is on a ventilator after contracting COVID-19. Pierce's illness was first reported Wednesday after it prompted a hearing for accused Capitol rioter Shane Jenkins to be delayed, according to independent journalist Marcy and Washington Post reporter Rachel Weiner. Pierce is not at this hearing. He sent the lawyer from his office, who is not barred in D.C. Again, Wheeler reported. Mr. Pierce is in the hospital, we believe, with COVID-19 on a ventilator, non-responsive. One of the attorneys who was present reportedly told a judge. So this is the question that I have to the panel. And I feel like this is kind of a rhetorical question because you're all going to have the same answer, I think. How many deaths is it going to take of prominent conservatives before they actually start to take it seriously? My answer is there could be 1 million, and they're still not going to take it seriously. Farron, what's your take on this?
No, I agree. There's no limit. You know, to pull the quote from Mean Girls, the limit does not exist. So what we're talking about here, though, this story with John Pierce, this lawyer, I get a segment coming up on it tomorrow morning, actually, but I always make a point because I cover every single one of these when they happen. And it's getting harder and harder to continue to talk about it. You know, some of these people, you know, I always point out, listen, I guarantee you I never agreed with anything this person ever stood for, anything they ever did. But I wouldn't want any of them to die. Apley, like you talked about, has a infant son. Like that kid doesn't have a dad now. So he'll never know his real father, because of this stupid anti-vax bullshit that these people just have latched onto with this. And it is heart-wrenching. You know, I hate this because I look at my own kids and God, what would happen to them if something had happened to me, if I was this stupid and selfish? And luckily I'm not. But it's tough. But I always, again, I point out to people, I'm going to talk about every single one of these that happens because maybe there's one person out there that hears it that says, you know what? I'm gonna go get the shot. Because Valentine's family even said, because when he died Saturday, I think the family issued a statement Wednesday saying that he's going to make sure when he comes back, he is going to be more pro-vaccine for his audience. Well, they never got that. They didn't get to hear it. They never got that opportunity. And we're not hearing anybody, by the way, on their deathbed saying, oh, thank God I didn't get the shot. No, it's always the opposite. Like, why did I do this to myself? So I use these as teachable moments, and I don't know that we're ever going to convince everybody, but if we can at least convince one or two people maybe by talking about these stories, I'm going to continue to do it. Because even if I don't like you, even if I disagree with everything you think politically, I don't want you to die. But it is getting harder and harder at this point to have empathy, because this is what happens. This is what happens when you're stupid, and I don't want you to die. But my God, my empathy meter is running really low right now.
I'm gonna be more blunt.
You get desensitized to it. Go ahead, Dylan. I'll let you be blunt because
blunt.
you'll say the things that I won't say, and I'll live vicariously through you.
Wonderful. So this just feels like what's that old meme? I never thought the leopards would eat my face, sobs woman who voted for the leopard eating people's faces party.
Yep.
Yeah, who would have thought if you were able to fool yourself and all of your audiences that if you don't take the one thing that has an over 90% effectiveness rate to stop you from getting COVID, not only that, and people undersell this, not only does it drastically decrease the chance of you getting COVID, but if you actually do get COVID, your chances of surviving are still much, much, much higher. So it's not only that this vaccine helps stop you get COVID and it drastically increases your chances of not getting it, but then if you do catch COVID, the symptoms are most likely going to be less severe and you're most likely going to be able to walk away perfectly fine. It increases your chances dramatically. So even if you don't want to get it from the idea, well, it isn't perfect in saving me, well, then don't you want a better fighting chance if you do end up getting it anyway? These are people who have perpetuated these lies about this vaccine. These are people their words have caused people not only to die from COVID, but the people who have gotten COVID, they're going to have to deal with medical complications for the rest of their lives. We see the number 600,000. That's not the only way we should weight it. Number one, we should do it on an international scale. I think we're being very American-centric, but, we live here, I understand. But we need to think about the long-term health effects this is having on people. And the fact that these dumb fucks would rather, that waited for so long for FDA approval, waited so long, and now that we got it, they are instead gonna take fucking horse medication while the FDA begs them not to. I have empathy for human beings, but I cannot transplant extra brain cells into your brain. Science has not given me that yet. When it does, I'll do my best to do it. So I feel for these people's families, but I mean, it's like if I saw somebody stick their dick in the toaster and then jump in a volcano. It's like, I do feel for the family who just lost a family member, but we all knew what was gonna happen.
That's a great way to put it. That was that was brilliant, Dylan. No, listen, I don't, when I see these stories, it's not like I'm, oh yes, another one is going to die. Like I think that in the event of that they survived, like Phil Valentine, that would be wonderful, because I think that them surviving COVID after being near death, I think that in promoting the vaccine, I feel like they would be more effective than if they died. So Mac, don't you feel like, well, I don't even know how to phrase the question, because I'm just exasperated at this point. Like, do you think that being desensitized to all of this is morally acceptable? Because I do feel desensitized. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, no, I mean, I 100%. I get it. Like at this point, we're months into this. We've seen, like you were saying, it's just story after story after story. It's not like this is like a one-off thing. So you would hope or think that some of these people who watch their favorite conservative commentator get sick and then potentially die, or even barely survive COVID, you would hope that maybe that would be a teachable moment for them. But honestly, I'm not confident in that. We've seen the results of that. I mean, these people will shift the goalposts, no matter what happens. And we just saw that again, with the FDA fully approving the Pfizer vaccine. It's it was never about the FDA approval for a lot of these people. Now it's just about, oh, so now you really trust the FDA? It's we're never going to get through to a large, portion of the population who are listening to these types of people. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how much my empathy meter is at right now, but it's definitely decreasing as time goes on. But yeah, I mean, I would hope there could be some teachable moments in here, but it just doesn't seem like there has been.
Yeah, this is where I'm at. I feel like I am very, very vocal about supporting vaccine mandates, because I think that, the hopium in this story is that vaccine rates are increasing, but they're not increasing enough to get us to the point where we're going to reach herd immunity anytime soon. So this is where I'm at with the situation, and anyone on the panel can weigh in if they want to add to it. I feel like we have two options right now. We can either mandate vaccines and at least get us to herd immunity in the United States, hopefully, and effectively stop it, put a cap on it here, right? We still have to take care of the rest of the world, make sure everyone is vaccinated. But we can mandate vaccines and then do that, or we can not mandate vaccines and choose to let the anti-vaxxers keep all of society in a perpetual state of plague, all because they're uninformed or stubborn. So this is basically where I'm at. Like, I think that vaccine mandates are the only way we're going to have a shot. If it is vaccines that's going to help us end the pandemic. I don't know if anybody wants to respond to that, because I feel like that's a pretty controversial statement.
No, I mean, when this began, I was kind of more on the against vaccine mandates. But now that I'm seeing, in my home state of Georgia here, all of my local hospitals are filled up with unvaccinated COVID patients. It's like, I don't think it's acceptable for there to be a situation, and maybe this is selfish of me, but, I personally think it's more selfish of people to not be vaccinated. But, I wouldn't want a situation where one of my family members or myself, we get into a car accident or a heart attack or a stroke or just any other random normal illness that could happen. And then you're getting diverted from the hospital because it's filled up with unvaccinated COVID patients. To me, that's like just an unacceptable red line. So if we have to do vaccine mandates to do that, I guess that's what we have to do. And then it becomes a question of, how do you enforce vaccine mandates? Because, the flip side of that is I don't want a situation where, we have cops, that are going around and harassing a bunch of minority communities and using it as an excuse to, crack down on people. So there's definitely a nuanced discussion to be had there. But I think I've been trending more in the pro-vaccine mandate discussion recently.
I got two things I can say. The first thing I'll say is, when it comes to who can die or what can happen for these people to fall in line, Trump recently on his stage just recommended getting the vaccine, and he got booed. He got booed by our audience for just suggesting it. Alex Jones turned on him for that, saying, I guess Donald Trump's really a dumbass, right? If him just recommending, and then after it, he had to backtrack, but you still have your freedoms, and you don't have to if you don't want to, and it was just him backtracking so quickly. So if even he can't convince him to take it, then there's no one figure that can do it. Right? There's no way that, and the thing is, we should have all been able to kind of see the scenes that were happening when we had a mainstream Republican candidate, Donald J. Trump, arguing with a surgeon and Ben Carson on the Republican stage in 2015, saying, I don't know, maybe vaccines do cause autism. Those were planting some pretty dangerous seeds that I think we're now reaping. But here is my bipartisan solution, okay? So I got something for conservatives, okay? So for the liberals, it's a vaccine mandate. Right? But then for the conservatives, what we're going to do is we're going to get M2 Browning machine guns from General Dynamics, and we're going to fill them full of vaccines, and we're going to go through local communities and just shoot vaccines directly into the arms of every American. They can run and hide, but I will get a vaccine into them. And therefore, we help the defense contractors, which, the Republicans will love, and with the liberals get their vaccine mandate. So there you go. We got it. Everybody will be happy. There's my solution. Bipartisan.
That's even more extreme than my take. Yeah. Go ahead, Farron.
I think there's varying degrees when it comes to the anti-vaxxers, right? You have people who are vaccine hesitant, like, I don't know, do I really need this? Is COVID as bad as they say? And then you've got the Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s, right? The people that are actually cashing in on this crap. And I say that because that's very personal to me. I don't know if anybody's aware of this, but Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is actually the co-founder of Ring of Fire. He and Mike Papantonio began it as a radio show on Air America back in 2004. I was a researcher. I did research for Bobby every single week. He left, many, many years ago. But I've known him. I've worked with him. And this evolution from the very first time he put out that article, Deadly Immunity, we were just flabbergasted down here. We're like, what the hell? How this isn't even real. And we thought and we had hoped that was the end of it. But then to watch over the years, and again, he's been gone from us for many years at this point, to watch what has happened to him, like how far down this rabbit hole that he has gone, it's obscene. And it's really, really sad. This was somebody that I worked with for over a decade. And now he's a menace. He truly is. His advice, if you can call it that, his lies are going to get people killed if they haven't already. And so to me, it is a difference between the people like him that are out there spreading these lies and this misinformation that they have been told, I know for a fact, for over a decade, that it's not true. There's a difference between that, and there's a difference between the people who are out there saying, I don't know if it's right for me, you know?
Yep.
So when I say there's people we can reach those people. The Bobby Kennedys, you know, the little groups he's running now, they're gone. They're gone. You're not going to reach those people. There's no bringing them back. So, you know, that's my stance on it. And that's why a couple years ago, actually, before COVID, I compared anti-vaxxers to climate change deniers because I think that's an apt comparison. You're both looking at all the available data and still just saying, no, I don't want to believe that, so I'm not. And it actually pissed Bobby off something fierce, and he had messaged our producer, said, I want to debate fair. And I was like, I'm not going to waste my time on you doing this because I'm not going to give you a platform again. And it's just, it's ridiculous. And I hate it. And I hate to see, you know, the fact that like this guy used to be associated with us and it's really embarrassing now.
Can I ask one really tough question that I don't even particularly, I think I know the answer to it personally, but this is a question. So a big issue you just brought up with the spreading of misinformation. Now more than ever, there's less barriers between people and communicating to thousands of people online, either through Twitter, Facebook, and all these things. And there's not a lot of filters. Like if I was to go out and tweet right now, COVID vaccine doesn't work. Like there might be like a notification under it or something like that. There's not a lot of filters between me and posting that. And that could affect thousands upon thousands of people and whether they decide to get vaccinated. It can have real effects on whether people live or die. And so my genuine question is, how do we tackle, we can all say get the COVID vaccine forced mandate, but how do we tackle the topic of disinformation when it comes to things like health that envelops the lives of millions of people, when there's some people who are so financially incentivized to spread disinformation, whether it's about horse medication or COVID not working or COVID not being real?
I think that this is one of the biggest questions of the time right now, because this is all relatively new. Like we're only now recently reaching this phase in human history where lots and lots of people, most Americans, have access to the internet. And so this is something we have to figure out how to deal with. You know, we want to make sure that we maximize people's ability to speak freely, but at the same time, we have to draw a line. Are we going to allow platforms to, profit off of misinformation? I mean, Facebook has been a misinformation machine where there's the most of the, I think it was like the Disinfo 12 or something, they come out of Facebook. Individuals like Dr. Tenpenny, who claims that the vaccines will make you magnetic. So I feel like when it comes to public health crises like this, I am about drawing a really strict line. And people will say that I'm pro-censorship, but I mean, everyone is pro-censorship to an extent, right? Like if somebody said that they were going to post a video of somebody getting beheaded, and that was deleted, I think that most people would be okay with that. So it's just a matter of like where you draw that line, what's appropriate, what's acceptable. And when it comes to misinformation as it relates to public health, this has real consequences. People are dying. Hundreds of thousands of Americans have died. And so if people are actually propagating misinformation, these platforms, they need to regulate that. And I think that the little notifications on Twitter that you referenced, Dylan, is a really great start, saying this is incorrect. But if there are some voices that are very, very prominent, like Dr. Tenpenny, she shouldn't be on Facebook. How many, I mean, you can't quantify this, but how many people has she killed because of her, anti-vax misinformation? But then again, it's really messy because if we decide that we are going to get rid of this on platforms, how do you do that? How does the government, regulate that? It's a really complicated question.
Well, another possible route that doesn't involve, having to rely on the tech companies to do the right thing, because, as you just said, they don't like to do the right thing. Yeah. If we could, and this is a slippery slope, but I'm offering it up as a potential solution here. If we loosened libel laws a little bit, just a little bit, and allowed these companies who make vaccines, whether it's COVID vaccine or an MMR vaccine, because the true anti-vaxxers, attack all of them. And we allow them to just take them to court, put them through the ringer, and basically, bankrupt these people. That's a path. We've actually seen the right wing start weaponizing defamation lawsuits against a lot of people on the left. I don't know if anybody else here has experienced that recently, but yes, it's really starting to become a weapon that they're using. And so I say in these instances, these companies ought to be able to do something about this, because they're the ones essentially getting slandered by these individuals. They're the ones who are losing money. Not that I care about big pharma money, but they are technically losing money. They would meet the standards for a defamation lawsuit against these individuals. So I think we need to loosen it for these corporations a little bit, let them go after these people and watch the situation sort itself out.
See, I think that is a good potential solution, but it does fall under the relying on private companies, which makes it so tough. And it is a slippery slope, because it's like I've been kind of like on the side against these corporations. Like, I've played a 30-second clip of like a CBS interview with Donald Trump, and they've come after me, and it's like, okay, it's fair use, but I don't have a team of lawyers. So it is tough. And this is like the complexity of it. Like, I don't know what the answer is. Like, I know that this is bad and it has to stop, but I don't know what to do. And I think that this is something that people really have to try to have a nuanced conversation about, because any solution is usually demonized as, oh, well, that's just your pro censorship, or you're pro, like there's no nuance. It's always like this binary thinking. And I think that we really have to think deeply about this, because we've never dealt with this before. Like, we're in a situation where in theory we should be smarter than ever, because we all have access to mini computers, cell phones. And I sound like a boomer for saying that, so forgive me. But I mean, it's true. We have more information than ever, but we're dumber than ever as a society. So how do we adapt to this time? And I don't think that there's any like cut and dry answer to that. I think we're going to learn as we go along. The only issue is that there's a lot of deadlines that are catastrophic, climate change and misinformation with that, a global pandemic. So it's really hard. Like, we don't have the time to sort all of this out. So we're doing it real time, and it's not going too well. I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss, if I'm being perfectly honest.
I would suggest two things, and there's room for nuance on a lot of these things, but in my opinion, honestly, I think the world would be a hell of a lot better off if we just simply deleted Facebook and TikTok from existence. Yes. That's just my personal take on that. I agree with that. Facebook is more so like older people that are getting misinformed with all the COVID misinformation, but like, I know a lot of people that are in even my circles, people who I consider to be pretty smart people, who get wrapped up in a lot of stuff on TikTok, and it's just wild to me seeing it. It's just a cesspool, like a breeding ground for this stuff. But so yeah, I think we should delete those from existence, and we'd be better off from it. Yes. And then number two, I think the thing that people don't necessarily talk enough, and I agree with both Dylan and Farron on a lot of those things that you guys were just talking about, but I think the thing that people leave out of the conversation a lot is we have a ridiculously rapacious for-profit healthcare system here that has consistently screwed over Americans for decades and decades. And so it's like, if you don't want to have a landscape where people are susceptible to misinformation, well, then maybe create a healthcare system where people actually have the ability to go and form a relationship with a doctor, and they're not getting screwed over by their health insurance company, and they're not falling into bankruptcy, and they're not getting screwed over by big pharma companies, et cetera. It's like, we need a complete overhaul of our entire medical system. We need to, push for something like Medicare for all. For health insurance, we need to nationalize big pharma. Those are the types of ways that I think we could actually, like, in a long-term way, address the problem of misinformation, is stop allowing for a situation where people don't trust the medical system in the first place. But those are just my takes on it.
Yeah, no, rebuilding trust in these institutions, I think that is important, because people rightfully, they don't trust the government. They don't trust big pharma. And I get it, right? These are, they're vultures. We live in a late stage capitalist society, so there's not a lot of trust to go around. But yeah, I think that rebuilding trust in institutions, trying to fight like this anti-intellectualism where we think that like doctors are part of some grand conspiracy, like trying to do all these things at once is important, but it's a matter of like, how do we get it done?